Even when God writes a law with Moses, which is the huge, massive 600 plus list, that whole list, God says, it's not even about the list. The list is examples of how to love me. Last week, we looked at the end of the world. Jesse walked us through that. Really well done. And to really understand how the whole thing comes to an end, it was a great time last week to look at that. Go back and listen if you hadn't. When we come to the end of the world, what that passage brings us to in Revelation 20, which we discussed last week, was the end of the world really brings together and points out the finality of evil. The finality of evil, right? Evil does not have another chance to rise up. There's not another surprise attack coming at the end. Revelation 20 wraps up and completes the story that evil and its very existence is done away with forever. It's not one of those bad horror movies where you think the bad guy's dead and you turn and hug and then he comes up again and tries to get you. None of that happens. The finality of evil is explained and laid bare as the lake of fire is the end, the consumption of all things evil. Then it also teaches us the eternality of good. The eternality of good, that good will be forever, eternally. There is no ending to it. It will never lessen. There's never a time when good will be mixed with bad. There's no more back and forth. Good and goodness in all of its strength and all of its God-designed strength lasts forever. When we come to the end of the story, we see evil is done away with, never to wreck another human life. And good will last and grow better and better and better forever. That's how the book ends, and that is the great conclusion to God's work in human history as he brings in the new age. And what that does is that speaks to everything every human being really wants. Not just believers or Christians, but every human being, because we are made in God's image to live on this earth that he has made, and every human being recognizes and enjoys that ending. We know that evil should be destroyed. We know it should. Every human being hates the existence of evil. To see it destroyed is right. We know that goodness must last, and we all desire, as we live our lives, we feel the struggle and we desire good to win. We know that ending is just. It is righteous. It is justice itself, that evil is punished. Evil should be punished. And what is right and what is good is lifted up. The end gives us that story, and every human being desires it. Again, not just those in Christian faith or faith at all, but being human, we know that ending is right. We know that is what God is supposed to be. Even those out there that are atheists or a few different things, deep down in the very DNA of being human, we know that God must be that. The condemner of evil and the lifter up of righteousness. That must be what God is. The end of the story tells humanity that he is exactly what we hope he is. And he brings about the end that we're hoping for. The end answers that challenge. It gives voice to that challenge that every human being has had is, why doesn't God stop evil? Why is there evil? What is going on and why doesn't God put an end to it? The end of the Bible answers that firmly. God does act. God is not ignoring. He is not sweeping it under the table. God destroys, condemns, and wipes out evil. He is not impotent to do it. He is not careless. He has great concern and great desire, and he ends it. That challenge that people have. But of course, even as we humans challenge that idea and bring that up, why doesn't God do something about the evil? Even as we wonder that and think philosophically about that, what we all really mean, what we all really are asking is, why doesn't God stop the part of evil that's hurting me? We can even agree philosophically that there'll be an end of the world and all good will rise and all bad will go away. Then even if that's right, and even if we agree to that, we still want to know, but what about right now? The evil that's hurting me and my loved ones and the life I'm trying to live. Why doesn't God do something about this evil, my evil? The problem of evil is an age-old question. Humans have been asking it forever. If you've been engaged as a Christian believer with any non-Christians and at all got into a deep conversation about why you believe and whether God's real, if you've had any of those conversations, I would bet the problem of evil's come up in it. Well, why does God let this happen? And what about pedophiles? And what about murders? And what about tornadoes and hurricanes that kill people? What about all this bad stuff? And every time the news reports another school shooting, every time, terrible accident happens, which is all the time, the question comes up again, right? Why doesn't God do something about that? Why doesn't God deal with evil? Revelation 20 tells us he does in an absoluteness one day. What we're going to get to here, to answer the question, what about my evil or my particular evils or the evil I want him to stop? Think about that a little bit. I think we're also asking, why doesn't God stop the evil I want him to stop? Because there's some evil I don't want him to know about. There's some evil I don't really want him to dance with. Don't deal with my greed or my selfishness right now. I mean, I'll get better. Don't leave me alone there, God. But stop this evil that I don't like. Really what we're saying. We're honest. That's what we're really asking. The answer to that, though, the Bible answers it. It's not left there. It's not left to be this, I don't know, and we'll just see. Too many times, brothers and sisters, we are trying to implore you every Sunday. The Bible answers it all. The hardest questions, the most confusing things. God has not left us just saying, I don't know, we'll just see. God has not left us like that, especially with the most important things. So to answer this question of the evil I want him to stop and the evil that's hitting us day by day, we go back to the beginning. So we'll be in Genesis 4 this morning, looking at the story of Cain and Abel. Genesis 4 and the story of Cain and Abel brings us the dilemma of evil. There's a dilemma there because what we know is that evil is there and God can and will stop evil, but we know that when God stops evil, it's the end. To get rid of evil means the end of all things. Come to an end. Bring about the end of evil, which is the end of everything. And start the new age. So we want God to stop evil, but not end everything. We still want to live and have history and life. So how do we stop evil, yet still have a human race going on in this age? How do we have both? That's the dilemma of evil. If God puts an end to evil, then it's the end of everything. But if he doesn't put an end to evil, then life goes on and we can have this whole life experience, but then the evil's in it. Do we want evil in it or not? Do we want to be around or not? That dilemma is what we're introduced here in Genesis chapter 4. And the answer, the ultimate answer to the dilemma of evil is the patience of God. That's also brought into us here. We're going to see it more in the next couple of weeks as we finish this story. But the patience of God is the answer to the dilemma of evil. To the problem of evil that we're going to read here, you all know this story. We're going to dive into it specifically. But the dilemma of evil that we see here is that evil is all pervasive. It is everywhere. It is not just a place that we can look at and isolate. It is everywhere. It creeps into everything. It's a weed growing in every garden. It's a little virus in every body. It's a little strain in every thought. Evil is everywhere. There is no isolating it, therefore getting rid of that part. It's impossible to isolate. It is everywhere. We're going to see that in the story. And also, evil is not just about coming in and trying to cause a bad day or ruin a little thing. Evil desires rulership. Evil desires to be king. Evil desires to take control completely. So there is no little bit of evil. There is no a little taste of it. Evil rules and dominates, or it doesn't. It is not satisfied to have a peace. It works and runs and grows until it controls. That's the story of evil and what's happening within human hearts from Cain and Abel to us, to every human, until the end. And the dilemma is what to do with that type of invasive, dominating trouble. So let's dive into the story and see how it works out. Cain and Abel, chapter 4 of Genesis, verse 1. We're going to read through verse 12 and then study this story. Genesis 4, verse 1. Now Adam knew his wife, and she conceived and bore Cain, saying, I have gotten a man with the help of the Lord. And again she bore his brother Abel. Now Abel was a keeper of sheep, and Cain a worker of the ground. In the course of time, Cain brought to the Lord an offering of the fruit of the ground. And Abel also brought of the firstborn of his flock and of their fat portions. The Lord had regard for Abel and his offering, but for Cain and his offering he had no regard. So Cain was very angry, and his face fell. The Lord said to Cain, why are you angry, and why has your face fallen? If you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door. Its desire is for you, but you must rule over it. Cain spoke to Abel, his brother, and when they were in the field, Cain rose up against his brother Abel and killed him. Then the Lord said to Cain, where is Abel your brother? He said, I don't know. Am I my brother's keeper? The Lord said, what have you done? The voice of your brother's blood is crying to me from the ground. And now you are cursed from the ground, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you work the ground, it shall no longer yield to you its strength. You shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth. Thank you, Lord, for your word this morning. Now, Adam knew his wife Eve. So Adam and Eve, we know them, the first 3 chapters, right? Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve, human beings there, put there as ruling priests to run the garden, protect it, work as a temple belonging to God, be his priests, be his representatives, be his image bearers, with given the role and job to then rule the earth. Subdue the earth and rule it, govern it in my name is Adam and Eve's job. Just have anything you want. I've given you everything for the best life possible. Just don't eat from that one tree. And they did eat from that one tree, desiring their own sense of good and evil, desiring to define for themselves good and evil, and they're kicked out of Eden. So now we are in Genesis chapter 4, we are in a world east of Eden. We are not in Eden, not in a temple, not in that relationship with God of closeness to him. Outside of that temple closeness relationship, and Adam and Eve have children. Now, one thing about children, Justin taught on this and when we talked about Adam and Eve and the children coming from them. One of the blessing of children, the promise of children, that life will go on. Sin causes death, but God graciously continues life and grants them children. It even says, you will have a child and offspring. You will have one someday, and that one will destroy evil. That one will put an end to the serpent. That one will put an end to the serpent in his work. You have a promised child coming. And when you have that child, the work of the serpent, the deception of the serpent will come to an end. So a great promise in childbearing. And so we come to the story, and it begins with they have children. And Eve names her firstborn son Cain. Cain means gotten or acquired. And the idea is, she says, I have gotten a man with the help of the Lord. Some commentators will say this, that Eve is kind of selfish now. Like, oh, I made my own child. I made it, like God helped me, but I'm the one that brought this child forth. I don't think that's the tone at all. Some commentators say she's being selfish here, kind of reading selfishness and evil into Eve. I don't think so. I think she's actually, in a worshiping sense, like claiming God's promise. God promised you will have an offspring, and that offspring will crush the head of the serpent. Like God promised, you're going to have a kid. And one of those kids someday, some offspring, God doesn't give them a timeline, but some offspring is going to destroy that evil. So she's claiming that. She's like, yes, Lord, thank you for a kid. She has Cain, and Cain means acquire or to have. And so she has now the child, the promise. I think that's what the name Cain means to her. I think that's what the story is telling us, that God promised a child, and she has one. And she celebrates that, hoping that's the end of evil. Then she has another child, Abel, is born. And it tells us now a little bit. We don't know a lot about these two or a lot about their lives. It tells us a little bit. Verse 2, she bore Abel, and Abel was a keeper of sheep. So he's a shepherd, and Cain is a farmer. Cain works the ground, tiller of the ground. So we just know shepherd and tiller of the ground, pretty normal again. Whatever amount of years ago, the beginning of human society, right? You domesticate some animals, so you have the animals to do all the work and eat and all that. You take care of the land and grow a farm, grow crops, and so they have, animals and crops here. I think it's fascinating, verse 3, in the course of time, Cain brought to the Lord an offering of the fruit of the ground, and Abel also brought the firstborn and the fat portions. They give an offering. We have no law now. We have no definition. We have no temple or church or synagogue. We don't have that stuff yet. That's not developed. But they have, the best we can say, it doesn't give us the rationale, but they have an instinct. They know God. Adam and Eve, were with him, Garden of Eden stuff, passed on to their kids. They know, and they bring an offering to him. Just the natural reaction to God is to bring an offering. And so Cain works the ground, so he brings an offering from the crops, and Abel takes care of animals, so he brings an animal. And here we see a hint that Moses is the writer of this. Who did the whole Exodus and Red Sea, he wrote the entire law, right? Moses knows it all ahead of time. He's giving us a little hint as he writes back this story. Little hints that don't mean a lot in the story, but are hints to look for later. Cain brings crops, and Abel doesn't just say Abel brings a sheep or an animal. He brings the firstborn. So we see a hint here that Abel brings the first, and he brings the fat portions, which in its own context here doesn't mean a lot, other than we know Moses is giving us a heads up. This is the best part of the animal. We know that later. Abel brings the first animal, the best part of the animal. What we're hearing here is Abel is giving an offering that we know later on matches up with what God asked them to give. And it says that God did not have regard for Cain's. The language is, because there's a play on words we'll get to, the language is God gazed on Abel's and looked at it and said yes, but he did not gaze upon Cain's. He did not look at it and say yes. Have regard is our translation, which is perfect, but there's a play on words, so I just want to highlight that. God looks at Cain's and says yes. God does not God looks at Abel's. Abel's is yes, the animal. He does not look at Cain's and say yes. He doesn't gaze upon it. He doesn't have regard for it. He doesn't like it. Now again, some commentators say, well, this is because you have to give animals and not crops, and Cain's given the wrong thing. I don't think that's true. I don't think that's anywhere in there. Because when you go to the law and all the list of all the offerings, Leviticus, which has all the offerings in Leviticus, chapter 2, the very second chapter, has the whole chapter is about grain offerings. Like God accepts and asks for and demands grain offerings throughout the law as well. So it's not that it's grain, because God asked for that later. Grain, it's fine to give grain. There's something else going on. And again, there's a hint that real relationship and covering of sin and all that will take blood. Like we know that's, again, Moses giving us a little, hey, just pay attention. Later, the blood of animals is required for sin offerings. And of course, later than that, the blood of God is required for our sin offering, right? So we know that that's coming. But here, it's not about grain versus animals. It doesn't even tell us. God did not have regard. He didn't look at Cain's and say yes. But he looked at Abel's and said yes. People try to grab because Abel gave the firstborn and all that, and that's part of it. But it just doesn't tell us. And sometimes I read this, I'm like, God, why did you just say? Like, I want to know, like, what's going on? But then other times I'm like, thank you, God, for not telling me. Because if he told me what exactly was wrong with Cain and right with Abel, I might make a list and say, there's my check mark. I'll do the thing Abel did, and I won't do the thing Cain did. And if I just do the right thing, then I'll be accepted. I'll be okay. My human nature might make it just a list. But God doesn't give us any of those details. What we know is something between Cain and God wasn't right. That's all we know. But it wasn't. And so the offering wasn't worth anything. It had nothing to do whether it was grain or animal. It didn't have, the material of the offering was not the problem. The person giving the offering, there was the problem. There's something there. The relationship's not right. So there's no relationship between Cain and God, so the offering is not accepted. There is right relationship between Abel and God, and that offering is accepted. And we know this a little bit just because it's not accepted, but then as we go on, verse 5, But for Cain and his offering, God, he had no regard. So Cain was very angry, and his face fell. Cain got mad at God. Cain decided God's in the wrong here. See what's happening there? If Cain gets to this place where God's the wrong, between the two of them, God's the wrong one, that tells us all we need to know. I'm going to burst your bubble here, hopefully not too many of you. If you're ever really upset with what's happening in life, God's not the wrong one. If you and God are having an argument, you're the one that's going to lose. So don't even go there. But that's what's happening. Cain gets angry. Cain gets hot-tempered and judgmental and feels he's in the right, and so he's angry at God. And I don't think it's an angry at God. We use the words and we can mean different things. Like something terrible happens and we're like, oh God, and we say we get angry at God, but we're angry at the situation, and that's okay. You can feel the emotion of anger. You can feel the emotion of distress and sadness, right? When bad things happen, you should feel upset. There's nothing wrong with the emotion. The point here is not that it has an emotion being upset over something bad that happens. It's that he is angry at God because God's the cause in Cain's mind of the problem. See, that's the difference. God is the cause of the evil. God is the cause of the problem. And when we go there, brothers and sisters, when we go there, we are in very dangerous ground. When I get to say, God, it's your fault. I'm right, God, you're wrong. That's a bad place to be. But that's what's happened. So that's why his offering was not regarded. God did not gaze upon his offering, not because of the moment or the grain. There's something going on where Cain does not have relationship. Cain does not really know God. Another little just side note, it's not really the main point of this passage, but both those boys are in church, right? They're both bringing offerings. They're both doing the good Christian thing. They're both in the right place. They're both doing the same deed. I hope I'm stepping on a couple toes right now. They're both doing the good church boy thing. But one of them knows God and is accepted. The other one does not know God and is rejected. Going to church ain't what gets you in. This little side piece there. So Cain gets angry and says his face fell. So again, God didn't look upon his thing, his face falling. All this with the face. Face falling, it's just a euphemism. We all know it just means, kind of sad, just frown, right? His face fell. He gets this sad, frowny kind of feeling towards God. Verse 6, the Lord said to Cain, why are you angry? Why has your face fallen? Right? So why are you angry, at me, that's who he's angry at, and why did you have this depressed, sad, fallen face? Why do you have that? It's a real question. It's not rhetorical. He's asking this real question, really, why is this right? This is not, doesn't have to be this way. You weren't driven to this. Nothing happened to make you this way. You're going this way, Cain, on your own. You don't have to be. You don't have to be angry at me. Your face does not have to fall looking at me. This is not where you need to be. Why are you going there? Why are you letting this happen? Why are you acting this way? A very real question, I think, not rhetorical. God continues in verse 7, if you do well, will you not be accepted? If you do well, won't you be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door. If you do well, won't you be accepted? Do well is also a very, very generic term. If you do the right thing, as Spike Lee would say, if you live well, if you just take life and do it right and just enjoy life and work hard, it's all of that stuff. It's not any specific thing. Again, it's not a list. He doesn't say, if you do this one thing, won't you be accepted? I love that God doesn't make it specific. Because again, I would make it another list. Here's the do's and don'ts of my life. And God does not have a list of do's and don'ts. God says from Genesis 4 all the way through it, God says, know me. Love me with all your heart, soul, strength, and mind. Even when God writes a law with Moses, which is the huge, massive 600-plus list, that whole list, God says, it's not even about the list. The list is examples of how to love me. That's what it is. Know me, love me, have relationship with me. Let me love you and you love me. Live with me. Rule the world as my representatives, the image of me in this world. Live that way. That's what he says here with Cain. If you do well, if you run your life, if you live your life well and run it and be my representative and govern the way I've shown you to govern and live with me, if you live well, won't you be accepted? And the accepted, the word means, won't you be lifted up? Cain is angry and his face and his countenance falls. God says, if you do well, won't you be lifted up? There's this play, Moses is playing with these words and this language to just make the point. God's not gazing on your offering because your face has fallen with him and you go down because you're angry at God, but if you live well, won't God lift you up? It's all this language of God just saying, it's us. It's not playing church. It's not just trying to go through the motions. Hey, Cain, I'm right here. Know me. Live with me. I've given you all you need. You are in a world and in a place where you can live well. You can be the king and you can be the royalty of this world, as I told your parents. You can govern and subdue the earth like I told your parents. Live with me. Won't you be fine? Won't I lift you up if you just look at me? Be with me. You'll be lifted up. Brothers and sisters, this is the same answer for our lives today and every other human life. How do we get through this life? How do we make sense of it? What's going on? How do we deal with the good and bad? How do we love our families? How do we do our jobs? How do we make church a place we want to be? How do we do this? Just be with God, not against him. Run life the way he made life to run, not some other way. Let him decide what's right and wrong, what's good and evil, and don't decide for myself what's right or wrong or good or evil. Let God be God and join him. That's it. That's it. God says that again, not rhetorically, very plainly and clearly to Cain. Look, just if you do well, if you just live with me, won't you be fine? You're so angry, your face is downcast. Won't you just be fine if you just live with me? But if you do not, the end of verse 7, if you do not do well, and if you do not just live life the way you're designed to, the way I made life to be lived, if you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door. This is the first time we get the word sin in here. Even with all Cain and Adam and Eve stuff, the word hasn't come in yet. Here's the word now for the first time in the Bible. Sin, and it's anthropomorphized. It's made human, right? It's given like a body. Sin is not a thing, but it's named as sin is crouching at the door. It's a word picture of like it's a beast, like right there. It's a thing that's like you can see and grab. Sin is crouching at the door. Its desires for you, but you must rule over it. Its desires for you. That desires for you, all of the words put together there are, it desires to master you. It desires for you, but not in like a relationship, like let's be partners. Desire to have you, desire to consume you. Its desire is to own you. Sin's desire is to own you, to rule you, to consume you. That desire was for Cain, and it's for us. Sin's desire is to consume you and me. But, God says to Cain, you must master it. You must rule over it. It's not a coincidence that Moses, inspired by the Holy Spirit, uses this language of authority here, right? Because we've seen that. Genesis 1, Adam and Eve, go out, subdue the earth, and rule it, govern. They are called to be the rulers of the world. We did this a couple weeks ago. From the rest of the Bible, we see this language where God then makes a kingdom called Israel to then run a kingdom. And then God makes, after Jesus comes and dies and gives new life to all who believe in him, he calls us, those who follow Jesus. We are called a royal priesthood, kings and queens. We are called to rule. The New Testament says that God takes people and he transfers them out of the kingdom of darkness, and he's brought us into the kingdom of his marvelous light. The Bible is not just using these words haphazardly. From Genesis 1, here in chapter 4, and all the way through, this language of kingdoms and rulerships. We really dove into this 2 weeks ago, to really dive in to see how this plays out. 2 weeks ago, you can go back and listen. But we see it again here. Sin has a kingdom. It desires to consume Cain and rule over him, make him part of its kingdom. Sin wants to make Cain part of his kingdom. But God says, but you, Cain, you must rule over it. You must stay in authority. You must not give in to that kingdom, but you must be the king here in that relationship. So all that's happened, though, so far has just been a bad offering, right? Look at the actual story. Like, Cain actually hasn't done anything too bad yet, kind of in our human sense. He came to church and he had a bad attitude. He didn't really care about God, and that's bad. But he just came to church and threw something on the plate that he didn't really care about. That's all that's actually happened. Okay, so when you make a list of how bad people are, if Hitler's always at the top, but if Hitler's up there, Cain's not right there. He just threw a mess in the plate. That's all he did. Cain, he's bad, but he's way down there. Verse 8. Cain spoke to Abel, his brother. And when they were in the field, Cain rose up against his brother Abel and killed him. There's no time, in the story, there's nothing between a bad talk with God and murder. Right? You see this? The story is throwing that together so quickly on purpose for us. He is bringing an offering to God. You would say he's trying maybe, or he's getting it wrong, but he's doing something in the form of relationship with God. It's completely wrong, and he doesn't know God, but it looks like he's trying. The very next sentence, he's murdering his brother. Fratricide, that's the title today. Fratricide, the murder of a brother. He goes from one to the other super quick. It just says Cain talked to him, they went out to the field, he rose up and killed him. We don't know the conversation, we don't know if it was the same day or 10 years later. We don't know if he's growing in hate or not. We don't know any of that stuff. All we know is the way God tells us the story, what God wants us to see is the connection between the two. Because God doesn't put anything in the middle. There's no time in the middle. There's no story in the middle. There's no development of Cain's issues in the middle. Nothing. Sin is crouching at Cain's door. The next sentence, he killed his brother. That's what the story's telling us. That's what it wants you to feel. Sin is crouching at your door. The next moment is murder. Brother murder, family murder. That's the next moment of this story. We talked in the beginning about the idea of the dilemma of evil and how we also really want God to deal with evil, but we want God to stop and deal with the evil I want him to deal with. Right? I want God to stop murders. I want God to stop cancer. I want God to stop terrible accidents that hurt people, right? There's really bad things. We could all list them. Again, we see them in the news all the time. We could talk about and list all those things. And we want God to stop all that stuff. Cain did not grow into a murderer. Cain did not have a relationship with God. Cain was angry at God. His only fault was being angry at God. That makes him a murderer. See what's happening there? I want God to stop some of the bad things that are happening in the world. The only way to stop the bad things happening in the world is to stop evil. Oh, no, but God, just stop that evil. But that evil isn't, that evil, the terrible part, is the same as being angry at God. The terrible, mass-murdering, horrible person is the same as not bringing the right offering. It's the same place. It's the same heart. It's the same issue. The issue is sin is crouching at the door. Sin is pervasive. Sin is right there, always right there, desiring to rule us. There is no getting rid of the murder, but letting some lesser things go by. You can't. They're not different things. We, in our humanness, where we measure life by how happy I am or how much money I have or whether I'm sick or not sick, right? The great American thing, maybe it's more, maybe it's just human, right? As long as you have your health, you have everything, right? We are so tied to this physicality. We are so tied to, like, this is all that matters. And so we say things that hurt this are worse. And so murder or an accident or a virus, right? Those things are worse than other bad things, like just being nasty or just being angry or just being unforgiving or just being whatever else. Like, those things are bad, but we can deal with them, or they're underneath or just in my head. Those aren't that bad. God stopped cancer and murders. Like, that's the bad stuff. We want to define them as different, and because we don't want our nerve endings to feel pain, we focus on that stuff. Cain's heart would not offer to God something worthy. And that was murder. That's why he murdered. That's why he hurt the flesh and did a terrible thing. Because his heart already was not connected to God. Revelation 20 happens, and it's the end of evil. It's the finality of evil. Because God, from this day forward, hates it and despises evil and has called for its end. But to get rid of all the big evils, there aren't big evils and little evils. It's getting rid of evil or it's not. And when God gets rid of evil, it's the end. So the Lord says to Cain, verse 9, "Where's Abel, your brother? Where is he?" Cain says, "I don't know. Am I my brother's keeper?" Been a lot of talk about that verse. Am I my brother's keeper? It's a terrible question. Like, people try to really answer it. Well, what's the answer? Is he his brother's keeper or not? What does that mean? I don't even bother to answer the question. It's a terrible question. The question comes out of Cain's utter disregard for God and utter disregard for his brother. The question doesn't come out of an actual inquiry. Should I keep my brother? He's not asking that. He's like, what do I know, God? Leave me alone. What do I have to do with them? Am I his keeper? Am I his shepherd? Right? Is he my little pet that I have to take care of him? I mean, the word keeper is even a little derogatory, right? Is he my pet that I got to watch out for him? Like, it's not a good question. He's not honestly asking a question. He's putting down his brother. He's dismissing God, who has the right to ask this and has created this relationship. So we might say, are we our brother's keeper? Well, again, that's not the right question. That's not the way the Bible talks about us. No, you are not anyone's keeper. It's a bad question. It's a derogatory question. All right? The way the Bible answers our relationship is put others ahead of yourselves. Consider others' interest ahead of your own. You're not someone's keeper. You're the servant to your brother. That's what the Bible says. You're not a keeper of your neighbor. You're the one that gives everything for your neighbor's benefit. Right? Right? The Samaritan with the guy on the road, right? He's not the keeper of the Samaritan that's hurt, the guy that's hurt. The Samaritan said, no, I'm going to give my money. I'm going to go out of my way. I'm going to take care of him. I'm going to make him more than me. But no, you are not your brother's keeper. You are your brother's servant. That's the Bible language for our relationship. So get away from trying to use these words. Cain is not the guy to use as an example. Okay, right? Don't use his words, right? So he's very derogatory. He writes that right back to God. Verse 10, the Lord said, what have you done? The voice of your brother's blood is crying to me from the ground. And that's a phrase we see throughout the Old Testament. It's this phrase of innocence, the innocent blood. Now, no one's innocent. Abel's not innocent either in the sense of all human beings, right? At this point, they're kicked out of Eden. Like, they're all sinners, right? That's true. Adam and Eve, it's gone on to their kids. But the blood of someone who should not have died, right? The blood of someone who should not have been murdered. So innocent in that sense. Abel should not be dead. Evil through Cain. Cain and evil killed Abel. Evil killed Abel. He shouldn't be dead now. So he's innocent in that sense. Blood has been spilled that should not have been spilled, and that blood's crying from the ground. God uses this throughout the Old Testament when we see the issues of justice and righteousness. When we humans get rid of other humans because of our evil and selfishness and murder, what happens is the blood of those innocent victims, not innocent in some huge moral way, but innocent in that they should not have been killed. They should not have been hurt by other evil people. And their blood crying from the ground means the very act and their death is crying for justice, crying for retribution, crying for put an end to evil. That's the story of Cain and Abel in Revelation 20 and of us in the middle. Evil, the result of evil is a cry from nature itself, the ground here, from us and our hearts, from all that God created in Genesis 1, the creation that God says, this is very good. Evil comes in and causes murder and pain and destruction, and even nature itself and all that's made by God cries out for justice. God, end this evil. Condemn what is wrong. Punish the guilty. That is the cry from the ground. The cry from every human heart as we face evil. It's everyone that argues with us about Christianity. Like, why doesn't God do something? What they're doing is they're crying from the ground, make things right. God declares he hears that cry for justice. Your brother's blood is crying to me from the ground. Verse 11, and now you are cursed from the ground, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you work it, it shall no longer yield to you its strength. You shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth. God doesn't kill Cain here. The dilemma of evil, right, how we started. Evil's out there. Again, even the bad offering, the anger with God and murder are right next to each other. It's the same thing. And so when justice is cried for, when all creation cries out for justice, the answer is to end evil, but to end evil is to end it. Like, not a piece of it, that doesn't end it. Getting rid of the bad parts doesn't end it. Getting rid of the really bad people doesn't end it. Like, you end it or you don't end it. So the cry is to end evil. The cry from the ground, the cry in every human heart is to end evil, God. And he does. Revelation 20, he ends it. It will not have another moment of existence of time. Between Cain and Abel, and us between now and Revelation 20, is the patience of God. The patience of God, who hates evil more than we do, who is offended by evil more than we are, who is more directly attacked by evil than we are. He doesn't kill Cain. He pushes him further out, more in exile, more away, and says, you're going to wander. And the ground, even the ground, which was hard. Remember, Adam's curse was the ground's going to be hard to bring out food. It's going to be a lot of work. It's sweat and toil. Cain, it's not even going to work for you. You're going to be a wanderer. He doesn't let Cain establish himself where his anger and evil can be established. He makes him a wanderer, never having enough to stay established. It does not end evil, but it minimizes and puts Cain in a place and puts him away so that righteousness can live, righteousness can be established. It puts evil and the evildoer wandering and a fugitive away so God can establish his righteousness again, which will grow and grow, and again, the very end is evil will be finally destroyed and goodness will be eternally established. He begins it here. A little theme that's creeping in right here, which we're going to really cover in 2 weeks from today, but it's a theme through the entire Bible. Back to Adam and Eve. They sin, they're going to die. Death has come to the human race. Right? Death with God, death with each other, death in their body. Death has come to the human race. The breaking of relationship, of the death of humanity has come. But God gives a promise, right? You're going to have a kid, like we said in the beginning. You're going to have an offspring, and he's going to crush the head of the serpent, right? I'm promising you, I'm making a covenant with you. There will be a child from humanity, from Adam and Eve, from the line of Adam and Eve. There will come a child, and that child will be righteous. That child will destroy evil. That child will not be ruled by sin, but will rule over and destroy sin. I'm making you that promise. Eve has 2 kids. One of them is owned by sin now. The other one's dead. As we close this passage today, and even the rest of chapter 4, because it gets worse, humans get worse than Cain as we go forward. We're going to talk about that next week. It looks like God's wrong. She's got 2 kids. One hates God and one's dead. It seems the covenant has come to an end. Of course it doesn't. In 2 weeks, we see the answer. But here, brothers and sisters, read this and understand, this string goes through the entire Bible. Every time God acts and blesses and has patience, humanity works in a way that looks like Satan wins over and over and over again. The largest victory of Satan, killing God himself on the cross. It's the same story as Cain and Abel. You're going to have an offspring, a kid who's going to crush Satan. Well, you got 2 kids and neither one could do it. One's dead and one's evil. Here's the Son of God. He's going to, take over the world and set his kingdom up. Oh, he's dead. It's the same story. And God's miraculous, God's powerful, and God's faithfulness to his promise always starts the next chapter. Brothers and sisters, evil is crouching at the door, it is pervasive, it is everywhere, it is sinking into everything, and not just happy being in the background. Evil is trying to dominate the world, you and me and everyone in it. Evil wants to consume us. But God has given you and me a faithful promise. If you believe in me, you will live. If you have faith in me, you will be redeemed. If you call on me, your sins will be forgiven. That's a promise. It's a promise that is the very foundation of our lives, because sin is still crouching at the door. It still desires to rule. Evil is still present, wandering on the earth, but present. One day, all will be thrown in a lake of fire. But today, we have God's promise. What does the word faith mean? What does any of this mean about anything? Do you believe him? The only question you need to answer. Do you believe God's promise? Adam and Eve had two sons. Neither one were going to do it now. One's dead, one's evil. For Eve, it was a matter of faith. Do you believe somehow there'll still be a kid that can win? Right now, there isn't one. It's a promise. Right now, you're in the world of evil and stuff going on, but God's made you a promise. You will have victory over sin and death. Do you believe him? Lo, I am with you always to the end of the age, Jesus says. Do you believe him? Govern your life. Live well with me, and you will be accepted. You will be lifted up by me. Do you believe him? Or am I going to find my own shortcuts? Am I going to do life my way? Am I going to try and be smarter than God? Am I going to try and outwit him and do things the way I think is best? That means I don't really believe him. Your entire life is around that one question. Do you believe God that what he says is real or not? And therefore you go do your own thing. Brothers and sisters, he has been faithful to every other human being and to every other promise he's made. God is whatever million and zero. Always come true, always is right, and 0 times has been wrong. We see the pages of Scripture tell that story in every human life. We, the church, we tell that story as we talk and share our lives and our testimonies and what God's doing. God is always right and 0 times wrong. So when you are faced with your next crisis, when you are faced with your next evil looking at you, when you are faced with the next problem, when you are faced with the next time there's not enough money, there's not enough issues, there's not enough medicine, someone did something wrong to you, when you're faced with that next thing, will you believe God can be there and work and lift you up in it, or will you not and make your own way to figure it out? God has always been right. Follow him. Pray with me. Jesus, you are the offspring who crushed the head of the serpent. And even as the serpent did its most to you by putting you in the grave, it was not enough. Because even in the grave, you are king. Even in dying, you took on sin and defeated it. Lord, thank you. Thank you for your life and your death and your resurrection. Give me hope today because of all those things. In your name, amen.